Mom, what happened to you?
I didn't want you to worry.
I sent money every month. Where did it go?
You don't understand what it was like. I never stopped caring about him.
I should have come home sooner.
Marcus Hale came home rich, tired, and ready to surprise the only woman who had ever loved him before he had money. But before his car reached the house he had bought for her, traffic stopped beneath an overpass near downtown Dallas. That was when he saw an elderly woman in a faded coat, sitting on a flattened cardboard box, tearing half a sandwich for a little girl beside her. Marcus stared once, then again. His chest went cold. The homeless woman under the bridge was his mother. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 6 hours earlier, Marcus had stepped off the plane believing he was coming home to joy. The Dallas air felt dry and familiar when the airport doors slid open. After almost 6 years in Singapore, even the smell of hot pavement and coffee from the curbside stand felt like something from childhood. Marcus Hale was 39 now. He wore a dark coat, carried one leather bag, and had the quiet confidence of a man who had built himself from long nights, hard choices, and too many missed holidays. His driver, Aaron, took his luggage and opened the back door. "Home, Mr. Hale." Marcus almost smiled. "Not home first," he said. "My mother's house." He had not told anyone he was coming. Not Rachel, his fiancée. Not his assistant. Not even Eleanor. Especially not Eleanor. He wanted to see his mother's face when he walked through the door. He had imagined it for months. She would be in the small brick house in Oak Cliff, the one he had bought after his first major contract overseas. She would probably be in the kitchen, wearing one of her soft sweaters, fussing over a kettle she did not need to fuss over. He would knock. She would open the door, and he would say, "Mom, I'm home." For years, Marcus had told himself he was doing right by her. Every month he wired money. Mortgage payments, groceries, medical care, home repairs, extra cash for comfort. Rachel helped manage it all from Dallas. Rachel was organized, polished, practical. She knew accounts, paperwork, appointments, insurance. She had told Marcus again and again that Eleanor was fine. "She's stubborn, but she's fine," Rachel would say during calls. "You know how your mom is. She doesn't want to worry you." And Marcus had believed her. Because he wanted to. Because believing meant he could keep working. Because the guilt was easier when the transfers went through on time. The car moved onto the highway. Dallas passed by in pieces. Glass towers, billboards, fast food signs, apartment blocks. Then older streets, lower buildings, narrow sidewalks, bus stops crowded with people carrying plastic bags and tired faces. Marcus looked out the window, quiet. At a red light near a downtown outreach center, Aaron slowed behind a line of cars. That was when Marcus saw her. At first, she was only an old woman under the overpass. Gray hair tucked under a knitted cap. Shoulders narrow inside a coat too large for her. A grocery bag beside her feet. Her hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped a sandwich from thin paper. A little girl sat beside her, maybe 8 years old, with tangled brown hair and pink sneakers that looked too small. The child watched the sandwich like hunger had taught her patience. The old woman broke it in half. Not the smaller half, the equal half. She gave it to the girl and brushed crumbs from the child's sleeve with a tenderness Marcus knew before his mind caught up. His breath stopped. "Aaron," he said. The driver glanced at the mirror. "Sir, pull over." "Here, pull over now." Aaron crossed carefully toward the curb. Marcus was out before the car had fully stopped. A horn blared behind him. He did not care. He crossed the sidewalk, his shoes striking the concrete too hard. The old woman looked down, trying not to be noticed. That was the first thing that hurt him. Not her coat, not the cardboard, not the plastic bag with what looked like all she had left. It was the way she made herself small. "Mom?" The woman froze. The little girl looked up first, then Eleanor Hale slowly lifted her face. For a second, Marcus saw the woman who had raised him. The woman who had worked double shifts at a hospital laundry. The woman who had packed his lunch when there was barely enough food for dinner. The woman who had told him to stand straight even when life tried to bend him. But her cheeks were thinner now. Her lips were dry. Her eyes, still kind, carried a shame that did not belong there. "Marcus," she whispered. The sound broke him. He dropped to his knees in front of her, right there on the dirty pavement. "What happened?" His voice came out rough. "Mom, what happened to you?" Eleanor tried to smile. It was the kind of smile people used when they were trying to protect someone from a truth that was already bleeding through. "I'm all right, baby." "No." He shook his head. "Don't do that. Don't tell me you're all right." The little girl clutched the half sandwich to her chest and moved closer to Eleanor. Marcus noticed. Eleanor noticed him noticing. "This is Lily," she said softly. "She's a good girl. She was just hungry." Marcus stared at his mother's hands. They were colder than he remembered when he took them. Rougher, too light in his palms. "Where are you living?" Eleanor looked away. "Mom." She swallowed. "There's a women's shelter on Harwood," she said. "Only temporary." The word temporary sat between them like a lie no one had the strength to dress up. "How long?" Eleanor's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. "A little over a year." Marcus felt the city tilt. A year. A full year. He had sent money every month. More than enough. He had paid for the house, the utilities, the doctor visits, the groceries. He had sent extra in winter because Rachel said the heating system needed repair. Rachel. His stomach tightened. "Where is the house?" Eleanor shook her head quickly. "Marcus, please, not here. Not in front of the child. What happened to the house?" Her silence answered before she did. Then Lily, small and nervous, looked up at him with wide eyes. "Miss Eleanor said we can't go back there," the girl said. "She said Rachel would be angry if we did." For a few seconds nobody spoke. Cars rolled past. A siren wailed somewhere in the distance. The city kept moving as if nothing had happened. Marcus stared at the little girl. Then he looked back at his mother. Rachel. The name hit him differently now. Not with certainty, not yet, but with doubt. A sharp, uncomfortable doubt he could not push away. He helped Eleanor to her feet. The cardboard shifted beneath her shoes. "You're coming with me," he said quietly. "Marcus, no." His voice wasn't angry. That almost made it worse. "You are not spending another night out here." Eleanor lowered her eyes. For a moment she looked less like his mother and more like someone who had spent a long time apologizing for taking up space. The sight hurt him. The shelter sat 3 blocks away. A brick building squeezed between an old church and a discount grocery store. Marcus walked inside carrying his mother's plastic bag. Everything smelled faintly of laundry detergent and soup. The staff knew Eleanor by name. That alone told him more than he wanted to know. A woman behind the desk smiled warmly. "Eleanor, you're back early." Then she noticed Marcus. The smile disappeared. Not because she was afraid, because she suddenly understood. Oh. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. His mother had become a regular here. The realization settled heavily inside him. The director introduced herself as Karen Mitchell. She had worked with homeless women for almost 20 years. Marcus asked if they could talk privately. Karen looked at Eleanor first. Eleanor gave a small nod. Inside a cramped office, Marcus learned things he never imagined hearing. His mother had arrived at the shelter 14 months earlier. She came with one suitcase, 2 prescription bottles, and less than $80. Marcus sat completely still. "That's impossible," he said. Karen didn't argue. She simply slid a file across the desk. Intake forms, emergency contacts, medical records, dates, everything. Real, documented, painfully ordinary. The kind of paperwork that existed because nobody expected anyone important to ask questions. Marcus read every page, his mother's name, her age, her medications, her sleeping arrangements, everything. The words blurred together. 14 months. 14 months while he was wiring money every single month. 14 months while Rachel was telling him his mother was comfortable. 14 months while he was working 16-hour days believing he was being a good son. Karen spoke gently. "Mr. Hale, your mother never wanted to be here." Marcus swallowed. "What happened to her house?" Karen hesitated. "You should hear that from Eleanor." The answer only made him more uneasy. When they left the office, Marcus found Eleanor sitting beside Lily in the cafeteria. The little girl was coloring on the back of a paper menu. Eleanor was helping her spell words. The same way she used to help Marcus when he was small. Patient, soft, never making anyone feel embarrassed for not knowing something. Lily looked up. "You came back." Marcus nodded. "Yeah. You really her son?" The question caught him off guard. "Yes." Lily studied him carefully. Then she smiled. "Good." Why, the child shrugged. "Because she talks about you all the time." Marcus looked at his mother. Eleanor immediately looked away. That hurt too. Not because she loved him. Because she had loved him while sleeping in a shelter. Karen arranged for a volunteer to watch Lily, while Marcus took Eleanor to a hotel. The drive there was quiet. The city lights reflected across the windshield. Neither of them knew where to begin. Finally, Marcus spoke. "When were you going to tell me?" Eleanor stared out the window. "I wasn't." He turned toward her. "What? I didn't want you coming home because of me." Marcus laughed once, a short broken sound. "You think I wouldn't come home for you?" She finally looked at him. And there it was. The thing he hadn't wanted to see. Fear. Not fear of poverty. Not fear of being homeless. Fear of disappointing her son. The fear of becoming a burden. "You worked so hard," she whispered. "I didn't want to be another problem." Marcus looked away before she could see his eyes filling. After everything she had done for him, she still worried about costing him too much. The hotel suite overlooked downtown Dallas. It was larger than the apartment where Marcus had grown up. When Eleanor stepped inside, she stopped. The clean sheets, the warm lighting, the private bathroom. Simple things. Normal things. Things nobody should have to lose. Marcus ordered dinner. Real food, soup, chicken, fresh bread. Nothing fancy. His mother ate slowly, like someone who had learned not to trust abundance. Halfway through the meal, Marcus finally asked, "What happened to the house?" The fork stopped in Eleanor's hand. The silence stretched, then stretched longer. "It wasn't all at once," she said. "What wasn't losing it?" Marcus listened. Months after he left for Singapore, Rachel started helping more with bills and paperwork. At first it seemed helpful, then necessary. Rachel handled repairs, insurance, property taxes, medical forms, everything Marcus couldn't do from overseas. She said she was helping, Eleanor said, and I believed her. Marcus felt something cold moving through his chest. Mom. Eleanor folded her napkin carefully, the way she always did when she was nervous. One day she brought documents. What documents, I don't remember exactly. His pulse quickened. Why did you sign them? Eleanor looked ashamed. Because I trusted her. The answer hit harder than any explanation, because it sounded exactly like him. Hours later, after Eleanor finally fell asleep, Marcus sat alone by the window. Dallas glittered below. His laptop rested open on the table. He logged into his banking accounts. Then he opened 6 years of transfer records, one by one, month after month. The numbers appeared. Large transfers, regular transfers, additional payments, emergency funds, medical allowances, everything he had ever sent. At first nothing looked strange, then he noticed something. A separate account. One he barely remembered authorizing years ago. Rachel had administrative access. Marcus frowned. He clicked deeper. The transaction history loaded. His heart slowed, then stopped. There were transfers he had never approved. Thousands of dollars, again, and again, and again. The money wasn't going to his mother. It was going somewhere else. At the bottom of the screen, one name appeared over and over. Kevin Brooks. Marcus had never heard that name before. But somehow he already knew it was about to change everything. Marcus barely slept. The name Kevin Brooks stayed on the laptop screen long after midnight. Every time he closed the computer, he saw it again. Thousands of dollars. Month after month. Money that should have gone toward his mother's comfort. Money that should have paid for groceries, medication repairs, and peace of mind. Instead, it had disappeared into an account connected to a stranger. At least that was what Marcus thought. A stranger. The next morning, he woke to the sound of laughter. For a second, he forgot where he was. He heard it again. A child laughing. Not loudly, not wildly, just enough to sound real. Marcus followed the sound into the suite's dining area. Eleanor sat beside Lily at the table. The girl was eating pancakes with complete concentration. Eleanor was helping her cut them into smaller pieces. The sight stopped Marcus. His mother looked different. Not healed, not magically better, but lighter. One good night's sleep had softened the exhaustion around her eyes. Lily noticed him first. "Good morning." Marcus smiled. "Good morning. You have a nice hotel." "I guess I do." Lily nodded seriously. "The shower is bigger than my whole room at the shelter." The comment landed harder than she realized. Children often told the truth without knowing how much it hurt. Marcus sat down. "Did you sleep okay?" She nodded. "Best sleep ever." Eleanor reached over and touched the girl's shoulder gently. The movement felt natural, practiced. Like this wasn't the first morning they had spent together. Marcus noticed, and he filed it away. After breakfast, Karen arrived from the shelter. She wanted to check on Lily before school. Marcus watched the way the social worker spoke to the child. Careful, protective, almost cautious. As if there were things surrounding this little girl that needed handling delicately. When Lily disappeared into the hallway to get her backpack, Marcus turned to Karen. "Can I ask you something?" Karen nodded. "How long has my mother known her?" Karen glanced toward Eleanor. Eleanor lowered her coffee cup slowly. About 10 months, Karen said. Marcus frowned. 10 months, Karen nodded. Lily came into emergency housing after a domestic situation. She chose her words carefully, professional words, the kind people used when the truth was uglier than the paperwork. What kind of domestic situation? Karen hesitated. I probably shouldn't discuss details. Marcus accepted that. But he could see enough already. Fear lived in Lily. It showed in small ways. The way she checked doorways. The way she flinched when voices got loud. The way she always seemed ready to leave. Children did not learn those habits by accident. When Karen and Lily left for school, Marcus found himself staring out the window. She trusts you, he said quietly. Eleanor smiled faintly. She didn't at first. What happened? Eleanor folded her hands. The same thing that happens to most lonely people. Marcus looked at her. We sat together. That was all she said. But somehow it explained everything. The shelter, the shared meals, the homework help, the protective way Lily looked at her. Neither of them had needed saving from each other. They had simply needed someone to sit beside them. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned to the shelter alone. He wanted answers. Not about Lily's case, about his mother, about the months nobody had told him about. Karen welcomed him into her office again. This time she brought a thicker file. Not official records, notes, observations, community assistance forms, volunteer logs. The story they told hurt more than the intake paperwork. Marcus learned his mother often skipped meals, not because food was unavailable, because she wanted Lily to eat. He learned Eleanor spent afternoons helping elderly residents fill out medical forms, helping people read letters from insurance companies, explaining prescription instructions. She had become useful to everyone around her, even while she had nowhere permanent to sleep. Karen smiled sadly. Your mother became the person everyone came to. Marcus looked down, while nobody came for her. Karen didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence answered for her. Before leaving, Marcus stopped by the common room. Several older women were sitting together watching television. One of them spotted him. You Eleanor's boy. Marcus nodded. The woman laughed softly. Took you long enough. The words stung. Not because they were cruel, because they were true. Outside, Marcus sat in his car for a long time. The guilt was becoming harder to carry. He had spent 6 years building success, companies, investments, recognition, but somewhere along the way, he had started measuring love in wire transfers and account balances. Now he was learning the cost of that mistake. When he returned to the hotel that evening, he found Eleanor sitting alone. The television was off. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Lily still at school? He asked. Eleanor nodded. After school program. Then she hesitated. The hesitation immediately caught his attention. What is it? She looked down at her hands. Nothing good ever started that way. Marcus. Yeah, there might be something I should tell you. His stomach tightened. About Rachel, no. Then what? Eleanor was quiet for several seconds. Long enough for Marcus to hear his own heartbeat. Finally, she spoke. It's about Lily. Marcus sat down. For the first time all day, he felt something shift, not toward answers, toward another mystery. Another hidden door in a hallway he hadn't known existed. What about her? Eleanor looked troubled, almost afraid. She keeps asking if she'll have to go back. Back where? Eleanor swallowed. To her mother. Marcus frowned. Why is she scared of that? The answer came slowly, painfully, because every time her mother disappeared, Eleanor said softly it was Kevin Brooks who came to get her. The room went completely still. Marcus stared at his mother. The same name, the same man. The stranger connected to the missing money. The stranger connected to a frightened child. And suddenly Kevin Brooks didn't feel like a financial mystery anymore. He felt like the center of something much darker. Marcus spent most of the next morning staring at Rachel's contact name on his phone. For years, seeing it had brought comfort. Now it brought questions. The woman he planned to marry had told him his mother was safe. She had managed the accounts. She had handled the paperwork. She had spoken to him almost every day. And somehow his mother had ended up homeless. He finally pressed call. Rachel answered on the second ring. Marcus, her voice sounded surprised. Then excited. Oh my God. You're home, aren't you? Why didn't you tell me? Marcus leaned back in his chair. He listened carefully. No panic. No hesitation. No sign that she knew he had already found Eleanor. I wanted to surprise everyone. Rachel laughed softly. Well, mission accomplished. When did you land yesterday? Another pause. Yesterday, something shifted in her voice. Not fear, calculation, very slight, easy to miss. Marcus almost missed it himself. You should have called me. I was busy. Rachel recovered quickly. Okay. Fair enough. So when can I see you? Marcus looked through the hotel window. The city seemed different now. Like something hidden had finally become visible. Today. Great. I'll come to the house. Silence. Only a second. But long enough. The house, Rachel asked. Yeah, you mean your apartment? No, my mother's house. Another pause. This one longer. Then Rachel laughed. Of course, the call ended. Marcus sat still for several moments. His pulse had quickened. She hadn't asked how Eleanor was. Not once. 2 hours later, he pulled into the driveway. The house looked exactly like the photos Rachel had sent him. Fresh paint, trimmed hedges, flowers near the front porch. Everything looked perfect. That bothered him more than if it had looked neglected. Because perfection could be staged. The front door opened before he reached it. Rachel stepped outside smiling. She looked elegant as always. Designer blouse, perfect hair, perfect makeup. The woman Marcus had imagined building a future with. She wrapped her arms around him. He hugged her back automatically. But something felt different, like hugging someone through glass. You look exhausted, she said. Long flight. She touched his cheek. I missed you. Marcus studied her face, searching for something. Guilt, fear, anything. But Rachel looked exactly like the woman he remembered. That was almost the problem. Inside the house looked immaculate. The same framed photos, the same furniture, the same curtains, the same corner Rachel always used during video calls. Marcus noticed it immediately. The angle, the lighting, the background. For years he had seen only this section of the house, never the rest. Never Eleanor's bedroom, never the kitchen, never anything beyond what Rachel chose to show him. The realization made his stomach tighten. Rachel poured coffee. You've been acting strange. Marcus accepted the cup. How's my mother? The question came casually. Rachel answered casually. Good. Yeah, of course. Marcus waited. Rachel smiled. She's doing much better lately. The lie landed so smoothly it almost sounded true. Marcus set down the cup. Really? Rachel nodded. She's comfortable. Happy. Why? Marcus stared at her. Seconds passed. Then more. Finally, Rachel looked away first. Marcus, what is this? He pulled out his phone, opened a photo. The photo he had taken beneath the bridge. Eleanor sitting beside Lily, wearing the old coat, holding half a sandwich. Rachel's face lost color. Not dramatically, just enough. A tiny crack. The first one. Marcus watched it happen. What happened to my mother? Rachel didn't answer. What happened to my mother? This time his voice was harder. Rachel sat down slowly. For a moment she looked tired. Not defeated. Not guilty. Just tired. You don't know everything. Marcus almost laughed. Then tell me. Rachel folded her arms. The defensiveness appeared immediately, like a shield she had been carrying for years. Your mother never liked me. Marcus blinked. What, she never accepted me? The words came faster now. Years of frustration finally finding an opening. No matter what I did, I was never enough. Marcus remained silent. Rachel stood. You were always overseas. You didn't see it. See what? How she talked to me. Marcus frowned. Rachel shook her head. Every choice I made was wrong. Every suggestion was wrong. Every decision was wrong. The emotion in her voice surprised him. Because it sounded real. Not rehearsed. Not fake. Real. And that made everything more complicated. You think I wanted this? She continued. You think I enjoyed fighting with her? Marcus listened. Part of him wanted to reject everything she said. Another part remembered moments. Small moments, awkward dinners, tension, sharp comments disguised as jokes. Had Eleanor been difficult sometimes? Probably. Families were messy. People hurt each other without meaning to. But none of that explained a homeless 70-year-old woman. Rachel stopped pacing. Tears gathered in her eyes. I spent years feeling like a guest in my own life. Marcus felt something twist inside him, because pain was standing in front of him. Real pain. But pain wasn't proof, and pain wasn't permission. Finally, he spoke. What happened to the money? Rachel froze. The room went quiet. There it was. The question she hadn't wanted. The question that mattered. Marcus took out a folder. Bank records, transfer histories, account statements, pages covered in numbers. I checked everything. Rachel stared at the documents. The color drained from her face. You had access to almost every account. She said nothing. Thousands of dollars left those accounts. Silence. Where did it go? Rachel lowered her eyes. Marcus felt his heartbeat pounding. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Rachel whispered something. So quietly, he almost missed it. I loaned some of it. Marcus stared. What? Rachel looked up. Her eyes were wet now. Not with self-pity, with fear. I loaned some money. To who? Rachel swallowed. The answer seemed difficult even for her, as if speaking it would make something real. Finally, she said it. Kevin. Marcus felt the room narrow around him. The same name. Again, Kevin Brooks. The man connected to the missing money. The man connected to Lily. The man standing somewhere in the center of all this. Marcus looked directly at Rachel. Who is Kevin? Rachel closed her eyes. And when she finally answered, the truth was stranger than anything Marcus had imagined. He's my brother. Marcus frowned. You never had a brother. Rachel slowly shook her head. Not officially. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Kevin is my father's son. My half-brother. And suddenly the mystery Marcus thought he was solving became much bigger than stolen money. Marcus did not leave the house immediately. After Rachel revealed that Kevin Brooks was her half-brother, the room seemed to shrink around both of them. The answers he had wanted were finally coming, but each one only exposed a larger hole underneath. Rachel sat across from him at the dining table. For the first time since he arrived, she looked exhausted. Not polished, not composed, just tired. "Start from the beginning," Marcus said. Rachel rubbed her forehead. "My father had another family before he married my mother." Marcus stayed silent. He left them. Nobody talked about it. Nobody wanted to. Kevin was his son. Rachel nodded. Years older than me, Marcus thought back. Years together, engagement plans, holiday dinners. Yet she had never mentioned him. Not once. Why keep him secret? Rachel laughed bitterly. Because that's what families do sometimes. They hide things they don't want to explain. The answer felt painfully believable. Marcus had spent enough time around wealthy families to know how many secrets lived behind neat front lawns and holiday photos. Rachel looked toward the window. "I met Kevin when I was 19. What was he like?" A long pause followed. Broken. Marcus wasn't expecting that answer. Rachel continued quietly. He had addiction problems. Gambling mostly, some drinking. He bounced from job to job, never stayed anywhere long. Yet you trusted him with thousands of dollars. Rachel flinched. The truth hurt, because she knew how bad it sounded. "I thought I could help him." Marcus almost responded, then stopped. Helping family. He understood that instinct. The problem wasn't helping. The problem was what had happened afterward. "What does Kevin have to do with my mother?" Rachel looked away. Again, another pause. Another hesitation. Marcus noticed she kept doing that whenever the conversation moved toward Eleanor. "Rachel." She exhaled slowly. "More than you think." The answer made him uneasy. Before he could push further, his phone vibrated. It was Karen, the shelter director. Marcus answered immediately. "Karen, sorry to bother you." Her voice sounded professional, but concerned. "Is everything okay?" Mostly, not entirely." Marcus sat straighter. "What happened?" "There was a visit this morning." His stomach tightened. A visit from who? Karen hesitated. A man asking questions about Lily. Marcus immediately thought of Kevin. Did he identify himself? What did he want? He asked if Lily was still staying with us. Marcus's grip tightened around the phone. "And we didn't tell him anything." Marcus stood. Rachel watched him carefully. The moment he ended the call, she knew something had changed. What happened? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked directly at her. "Does Kevin know Lily?" Rachel's expression changed. Fast. Too fast. There it was. Recognition. Fear. Something. Marcus saw it. And Rachel realized he had seen it. The silence between them became unbearable. Finally, she whispered, "Yes." Marcus felt his pulse hammering. How Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Not dramatic tears. The kind people fought against. The kind they lost. Because she's family. Marcus froze. What Rachel looked sick. As if she regretted every word before speaking it. Lily is Kevin's granddaughter. The room went completely silent. Marcus stared at her. He tried to connect the pieces. The frightened child. The shelter. Kevin. The missing money. Nothing fit together yet. And somehow that made it worse. "Explain." Rachel swallowed. "Kevin had a daughter." Marcus sat back down slowly. The story was growing larger, far larger than he had expected. A few years ago, she had Lily. What happened? She struggled. Rachel's voice softened. Substance abuse, unstable housing, bad relationships. Marcus had heard enough stories to understand what those words often meant. Children caught in an adult disasters, children paying the price. Where is she now? I don't know. The answer sounded honest. Rachel looked down. Nobody knows most of the time. Marcus felt anger building again. Not the sharp kind, the heavy kind, the kind that came when adults failed children. And Rachel shook her head. He was never capable of taking care of anyone. For a moment neither spoke, then Marcus asked the question that had been bothering him since the shelter. Why does my mother care so much about Lily? Rachel looked genuinely confused. What do you mean? Karen said Mom has been protecting her for months. Rachel stared at him. Then something strange happened. For the first time all day, Rachel looked surprised. Not defensive, not guilty, surprised. You really don't know? Marcus frowned. Know what? Rachel looked away. Her eyes seemed to focus on something years in the past, something Marcus couldn't see. Then she shook her head. No. What? This isn't my story to tell. Marcus stared. The answer made no sense. Before he could push further, Rachel stood. She walked toward a cabinet near the living room, opened a drawer, removed a thick folder, old documents, property papers, financial records. Marcus immediately recognized some of the forms. Others were unfamiliar. Rachel placed them on the table. I think you need a lawyer. Marcus looked down. One document immediately caught his eye. A property transfer form, another, and another. His chest tightened. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The signatures looked like Eleanor's, but the dates didn't make sense. Several papers had been signed after Eleanor had already entered the shelter. That shouldn't have been possible. Marcus looked up slowly. What is this? Rachel looked defeated. Not angry, not defensive, just defeated. The house. Marcus's stomach dropped. The house, what? Rachel closed her eyes. The house wasn't sold. The words hit harder than he expected, because for the first time he realized something. If the house hadn't been sold, then somebody had taken it another way. And whatever happened next wasn't just family betrayal anymore. It was beginning to look like a crime. Marcus looked back down at the documents. One line stood out immediately. A lender's name, a mortgage company, and beneath it another signature. Not Eleanor Hale, not Rachel. Kevin Brooks. The same man connected to the missing money. The same man connected to Lily. And now somehow connected to his mother's house. Marcus left Rachel's house carrying a folder that felt heavier than it should have. The papers inside were ordinary. Mortgage documents, property records, loan agreements. Nothing dramatic, nothing that belonged in a movie. And yet those papers had pushed his 70-year-old mother into a shelter. That was the part he couldn't stop thinking about. Real damage rarely arrived looking dramatic. Sometimes it came as signatures on forms nobody fully understood. The next morning, Marcus sat inside a law office in downtown Dallas. Attorney Daniel Reeves had spent nearly 30 years handling property disputes and elder financial abuse cases. He reviewed the documents slowly. No rushing. No assumptions. Just facts. Marcus appreciated that. Facts were becoming hard to find. After nearly 40 minutes, Daniel removed his glasses. This is worse than I expected. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. How bad? Daniel tapped several pages. The house wasn't legally sold. Marcus nodded. Rachel had already said that, but Daniel pointed toward a loan agreement. Someone used the property as collateral. Marcus leaned forward. For a loan, several loans. The room went quiet. Daniel continued. From what I'm seeing, Kevin Brooks gained authority over portions of the property through documents your mother signed. Marcus frowned. My mother doesn't remember signing most of these. Daniel nodded. I believe that. Marcus waited. Daniel carefully chose his words. Elderly people often sign paperwork, presented by people they trust, especially if those people claim they're helping. Marcus immediately thought about Rachel, about Eleanor, about trust, the simplest weapon in the world. Daniel opened another folder. What concerns me is timing. Marcus looked down. Several signatures appeared during periods when Eleanor had already been struggling financially. Some were dated only weeks before she entered the shelter. Others were signed after utility shutoff notices had already begun arriving. Nothing looked right. Nothing looked normal. Daniel tapped one page. If these records are accurate, your mother was losing control of her property while believing she was protecting it. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. That sentence hurt more than any accusation because it sounded exactly like Eleanor. Trust first, question later. The same kindness that had helped people her entire life had made her vulnerable. What can we do? Daniel sat back. We start collecting everything. Everything: bank records, medical records, property records, communications. Marcus nodded. Then Daniel added something unexpected. And I want information about Kevin Brooks. The name again. Always the same name. Every road seemed to lead there. 3 hours later, Marcus drove to the shelter. He found Eleanor sitting outside beneath a covered patio. Lily sat beside her doing homework. The little girl looked up and smiled. For a moment, the tension inside Marcus eased. Just a little. Children had a strange way of doing that. Lily proudly held up a worksheet. I got every spelling word right. Eleanor smiled. I told you she would. Marcus sat down beside them. The afternoon sun warmed the concrete. For a few minutes they talked about school. Nothing important, and somehow that felt important. Normal conversation, normal moments. The kind families often overlook until they're gone. Eventually, Lily returned inside to join another activity group. Marcus watched her disappear through the door. Then he turned to Eleanor. I met with a lawyer. She immediately looked worried, not for herself, for him. The same old habit. Marcus, you don't have to spend money on this. He almost laughed. The woman who lost everything was worried about legal fees. Mom, I'm serious. You shouldn't be sitting in a shelter worrying about my budget. Eleanor lowered her eyes. Silence followed. Then Marcus asked the question that had been growing inside him. What is it about Lily? Eleanor looked toward the building. For a long moment, she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice softened. She reminds me of someone. Marcus waited. Who? Eleanor smiled sadly. You. The answer surprised him. When you were little, she nodded, you were always worried about being left behind. Marcus frowned. I don't remember that. You wouldn't. She looked away. Children rarely remember the things they survive. The words lingered between them. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Eleanor continued quietly. Lily tries to act brave. Yeah, but every night she asks where she'll sleep next month. Marcus looked toward the shelter. The thought of an 8-year-old carrying that fear every day made him sick. Eleanor folded her hands. Children shouldn't have to wonder who wants them. Marcus noticed the emotion in her eyes. Stronger than before. Deeper. This wasn't ordinary sympathy. This was personal. Very personal. Mom. She looked at him. What aren't you telling me? For a second she looked startled, then tired, very tired, as if she had been carrying a memory too long. Before she could answer, Karen approached from the building. A thick file rested in her hands. She seemed hesitant, almost uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt. Marcus stood. Everything okay? Karen nodded. Mostly. The same word again. Mostly. Never completely. She looked at Eleanor, then at Marcus. I received authorization this morning to share limited information regarding Lily's guardianship review. Marcus immediately focused. Guardianship review, Karen nodded. Lily's case is moving through emergency family court. Marcus felt the pieces shifting again. Court. Records. Guardianship. The kind of paper trail that often exposed hidden truths. Karen opened the file. Several documents sat inside. Most were routine, case notes, placement reports, school records. Then one paper caught Marcus's attention. An attached hospital intake form from years earlier. Only a copy. Partially redacted, but a handwritten emergency contact remained visible. Marcus stared. The name felt familiar. Not because he knew it, because he had heard it recently. Several times, his pulse quickened. He took the page, looked again, then again. The emergency contact listed on Lily's old hospital record wasn't her mother. It wasn't Kevin Brooks. It wasn't a social worker. It was Eleanor Hale. And judging by the date on the form, his mother had been connected to Lily far longer than anyone had admitted. Marcus stared at the hospital record for a long time. The paper itself was nothing special. A photocopy, slightly faded. Half the information blacked out for privacy reasons, but one detail remained untouched. Emergency contact, Eleanor Hale. The date at the top made his pulse quicken. It was nearly 4 years old, far older than the 10 months Eleanor had claimed to know Lily, far older than anyone had mentioned. Karen noticed his expression. I thought you should see it. Marcus looked up. Why was my mother listed? Karen folded her hands. That's something I can't fully answer. But you know something. Karen hesitated, then nodded. I know your mother has been involved in Lily's life longer than most people realize. Eleanor sat quietly beside them. She wasn't surprised by the document. That told Marcus everything. She had known this day would eventually come. The question was why she had waited. When Karen excused herself, Marcus and Eleanor remained alone on the patio. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the concrete. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Marcus placed the paper on the table. Mom. Eleanor looked down at it. I was wondering when that would show up. Marcus exhaled slowly. You knew yes. Then tell me. The exhaustion in her face seemed older than the wrinkles, older than the gray hair, older even than the shelter. It looked like the exhaustion of carrying a story for too long. I met Lily years ago. Marcus waited. How Eleanor looked toward the playground where several children were running between picnic tables. Then she began. Her mother was very young. The words came carefully, slowly. She was trying to stay sober, trying to keep a roof over their heads. Marcus listened. No interruptions, no assumptions, just listening. One night Lily got sick. Very sick. High fever. Breathing problems. Eleanor's eyes softened at the memory. They ended up in the emergency room. How were you there? Another silence. Then Eleanor answered, because I knew her grandfather. Marcus felt the air shift, not because of what she said, because of how she said it. Known, not know, known. Past tense, a much older connection. His heartbeat quickened. Kevin. Eleanor nodded. Marcus leaned back. Every road still led there. Every single one. How long have you known him? Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, something had changed. The hesitation was gone. The truth had finally reached the point where hiding it no longer helped anyone. Almost 30 years. Marcus froze. The answer didn't make sense. Not at all. Kevin wasn't much older than Rachel. He certainly wasn't part of Marcus's childhood memories, yet his mother had known him for nearly 3 decades. Mom. Her voice softened. There are things I never told you. Marcus almost laughed. That was becoming the theme of his life. Hidden accounts. Hidden signatures. Hidden relatives. Now hidden history. Eleanor folded her hands, and for the first time she told him about a chapter of her life he had never known existed. Years before Marcus left for college, Eleanor had volunteered through a foster care support program. Not as a permanent foster parent, just temporary placements, emergency situations, short-term care, children with nowhere else to go. Most stayed a few days, some a few weeks. One stayed much longer. Kevin Brooks. Marcus felt his chest tighten. The name sounded completely different now. Not as a stranger, not yet as family. Something in between. He was 14, Eleanor said. His parents neither could care for him. The answer carried years of pain inside it. He came to us angry, scared, always ready to fight. Marcus pictured it. A teenager moving from house to house, learning not to trust anyone. Learning not to stay. We weren't supposed to keep him long. But you did. Eleanor nodded. Almost 3 years. Marcus stared. 3 years. 3 years living under the same roof. 3 years sharing meals. 3 years being part of the family. And Marcus had never heard his name. Why didn't you tell me? Eleanor smiled sadly. Because life moved on. Marcus wasn't convinced. Life didn't erase 3 years, not completely. Something deeper had happened, something painful. He could feel it. What happened when he left? Eleanor looked away. The answer clearly hurt. The state transferred him. Marcus frowned. Transferred him where? Another placement. Why? Eleanor shook her head. I never got a real explanation. Her voice cracked slightly. The decision came quickly. Marcus suddenly understood something. The loss in her face wasn't recent. It was decades old. She had never stopped carrying it. He thought you sent him away. Eleanor's eyes widened. The words had landed directly on the truth. Slowly she nodded. Yes. Marcus looked down. Everything began rearranging itself. The resentment, the bitterness, the broken relationships, the years. A boy who believed he had finally found a home, then lost it. A wound left untreated for decades, and now somehow connected to Rachel, connected to Lily, connected to the house, connected to everything. Before Marcus could ask another question, his phone vibrated. It was Daniel Reeves, the lawyer. Marcus answered immediately. Daniel. The attorney sounded unusually serious. I found something. Marcus stood. What a pause followed, long enough to make his stomach tighten. Then Daniel spoke. The mortgage records led me to another file. What kind of file? Guardianship records. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. His eyes moved slowly toward Eleanor, toward the woman who suddenly seemed connected to far more than he had ever imagined. Daniel continued, and Marcus, yeah, the name Kevin Brooks appears all over it. The lawyer paused again. But that's not the part that worries me. Marcus gripped the phone harder. What is? Daniel's voice lowered. The records suggest your mother wasn't just connected to Kevin. Silence. Then the sentence that changed everything. It looks like she may have once been legally responsible for him. Marcus barely remembered the drive back from the shelter. The lawyer's words kept replaying in his head. It looks like she may have once been legally responsible for him. Kevin Brooks. The man connected to the missing money. The man connected to Lily. The man whose name seemed attached to every painful discovery. And now there was proof that Eleanor's connection to him had been deeper than temporary kindness. That evening, Marcus sat in Daniel Reeves's office again. Stacks of documents covered the conference table. Property records, guardianship records, court filings, foster care reports. Nothing dramatic. Just years of paperwork quietly preserving a history nobody had talked about. Daniel slid a file across the table. This took some digging. Marcus opened it. Inside was a foster care placement summary from nearly 3 decades earlier. The pages were yellowed from age. At the top appeared a familiar name, Kevin Brooks. Marcus kept reading. Temporary placement. Extended placement. Recommendation for continued guardianship support. Case notes, school reports, medical visits, 3 years. His mother had cared for Kevin for almost 3 years. Not as a volunteer, not as a visitor, as the adult legally responsible for him. Marcus felt his throat tighten. For 3 years, Kevin had eaten at their table. For 3 years, he had lived under the same roof. For 3 years, he had been part of the family, and Marcus barely remembered him. Children forgot things adults never could. Daniel pointed toward another document. This is the important one. Marcus looked down. It was a transfer order. The state had removed Kevin from the placement. No misconduct, no complaint, no problem. Just an administrative relocation after a policy change. The decision had nothing to do with Eleanor. Nothing. Marcus closed his eyes. The tragedy became painfully clear. A teenager already abandoned by his parents had finally begun trusting someone. Then the system moved him. No explanation, no closure, no real goodbye. A wound like that could last decades. Do we know if Kevin understood this? Marcus asked. Daniel shook his head. I doubt it. Marcus already knew the answer. Kevin had probably believed the same thing many foster children believed, that he had been sent away because he wasn't wanted. The next morning, Marcus visited Rachel, not because he trusted her, because he needed answers. Rachel looked exhausted when she opened the door. The confidence she carried a week earlier was gone. The fight had drained out of her. Marcus sat across from her. I know about Kevin. Rachel lowered her eyes. Then you know why he hated her. Marcus nodded slowly. He thought she abandoned him. Rachel laughed bitterly. He didn't think it. He believed it. Marcus said nothing. Rachel stared at the table. You should have heard him talk about her. What did he say? That she chose her real family? The words landed heavily. Marcus suddenly understood something he hadn't before. Kevin had never been competing with Eleanor. He had been competing with a memory. With the idea of a family he thought he lost. Rachel continued quietly. He spent years talking about that house. Marcus frowned. What house? Your mother's house. The answer surprised him. Rachel looked embarrassed. He said it represented everything that should have been his. Marcus felt another piece fall into place. Not greed alone. Resentment. Old resentment. The kind that grew larger every year it stayed buried. Rachel wiped her eyes. I thought helping him would heal something, and instead she laughed sadly. It fed it. The honesty hurt more than excuses, because for the first time Rachel wasn't defending herself. She was admitting the truth. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned to the shelter. Karen was waiting for him. Her expression told him something had happened. What's wrong? Karen exhaled slowly. We received an update from family court. Marcus immediately thought about Lily. What kind of update? Karen handed him a folder. Inside were emergency placement reviews, school evaluations, caseworker notes. Marcus flipped through them, then stopped. One page caught his attention, a written statement from Lily's caseworker. He read it twice, then a third time. The report described repeated attempts by Kevin Brooks to obtain contact with Lily after her mother disappeared. Repeated requests, repeated denials, repeated concerns raised by social workers. Marcus looked up. What happened? Karen folded her arms. The court never approved placement. Why? Karen hesitated. Professional caution returned, but eventually she answered. There were concerns about stability. Marcus understood exactly what that meant. Debt, gambling, housing issues, unpredictability. The same pattern appearing again. Adults creating chaos. Children paying for it. Marcus looked down at the report again. Then another detail caught his attention. An attached note from a hospital social worker. Short, only 2 sentences, but enough. The note stated that during one emergency hospitalization, Lily repeatedly asked for Eleanor Hale and refused to leave her side. Marcus swallowed hard. The bond between them clearly ran deeper than anyone had admitted. Karen, he said quietly. What aren't you telling me? Karen looked uncomfortable. Not guilty. Just cautious. There was a difference. Finally, she sat down. When Kevin first tried contacting Lily years ago, your mother got involved. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. How involved? Karen opened another section of the file. Several pages had been added recently. Newly released records, court-authorized disclosures. Marcus stared at the names, the dates, the signatures. Then his eyes stopped on one sentence. For several seconds he couldn't speak, because suddenly everything Eleanor had said about Lily made sense. The fear, the protection, the attachment, the guilt, the hospital records. All of it. Marcus slowly looked up at Karen. What is this? Karen's voice softened. It's the reason your mother never stopped looking out for her. Marcus looked back at the page. The document identified Kevin's daughter as Lily's mother. But another detail stood out even more. Years earlier, when Lily's mother was still a frightened teenager, Eleanor Hale had personally sponsored her through a community housing and support program. She hadn't just known Lily. She had once tried to save Lily's mother too. And suddenly Marcus realized the tragedy stretched across 3 generations. Marcus sat in his car outside the shelter long after Karen went back inside. The file remained open on the passenger seat. Page after page told the same story. Not through dramatic revelations, through dates, addresses, emergency contacts, caseworker notes, the quiet paperwork of lives that had slowly fallen apart. Eleanor had helped Kevin. Then she had tried to help Kevin's daughter. Then she had protected Lily. For nearly 3 decades, she had been trying to stop damage from spreading through one broken family. And somehow she had ended up homeless herself, The unfairness of it made Marcus physically angry. Not the explosive kind, the deeper kind, the kind that settled into the bones. That evening he returned to the hotel. Lily sat cross-legged on the carpet doing homework. Eleanor was helping her with fractions. Neither noticed him at first. Marcus stood in the doorway watching. The scene looked ordinary. A grandmother helping a child with schoolwork. Except they weren't related. At least not officially. And yet the bond between them felt stronger than many blood relationships he had seen. Lily looked up first. "You're late." Marcus smiled. "I had meetings. Important meetings, unfortunately." She grinned. Adults always say that. The comment made Eleanor laugh softly. The sound caught Marcus off guard. He hadn't heard his mother laugh like that in years. Not through video calls. Not through short holiday visits. A real laugh. Warm. Unforced. For a moment he felt both comfort and regret. Comfort because she was still capable of joy. Regret because he had missed so much. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, Marcus sat with Eleanor near the window. Dallas glowed beneath them. Traffic lights flickered through the darkness. The city felt distant. The conversation did not. "Karen told me about Kevin's daughter." Eleanor nodded slowly. She had expected it. "I figured she would eventually." Marcus studied her face. There were no secrets left worth protecting. Not anymore. What happened to her? Eleanor looked toward the sleeping child, then back toward the city. She wanted a different life. The answer sounded painfully simple. She tried. Marcus heard the sadness immediately. Not judgment. Sadness. Did she make it? Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. No, the room fell quiet. When Kevin lost contact with her, she was already struggling. Marcus listened. Drugs, a small nod. Housing instability, bad relationships, bad decisions. The same story, different names, different generation, the same damage. Eleanor folded her hands. She wasn't a bad person. Marcus believed that. Life often broke people long before it broke their character. She loved Lily, another nod, very much. The pain in Eleanor's voice deepened, but love doesn't always win against addiction. Neither spoke for several moments. Eventually, Marcus asked the question that had stayed with him all day. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" Eleanor looked surprised. Then she smiled sadly. "Because none of it belonged to me." The answer sounded exactly like her. Protecting other people's dignity even when it cost her something. Even when it cost her everything. The next morning, Marcus attended a family court review regarding Lily's placement status. It wasn't a dramatic courtroom. No jury. No packed gallery. Just a judge, social workers, attorneys, and a handful of people trying to decide what happened next for a child. Real life rarely looked like television. The stakes were still enormous. Karen testified first, then Lily's caseworker. The reports were consistent. Lily was doing better. School attendance had improved. Behavioral concerns had decreased. Her anxiety levels had stabilized. The biggest factor mentioned repeatedly was Eleanor. The judge noticed. Everyone noticed. Marcus sat quietly listening. Each statement revealed the same thing. The woman society had allowed to become homeless had become the most stable person in Lily's life. The irony was painful. After the hearing ended, Marcus walked outside with Karen. "What's next?" he asked. Karen smiled cautiously. "We keep moving forward." She paused. "Lily still needs permanency." Marcus already knew that. Children couldn't build their lives on temporary solutions forever. Before he could answer, Lily came running toward them from the courthouse waiting area. She stopped beside him, a backpack hanging from one shoulder, hair slightly messy, completely normal, the way children should be. She looked up at Marcus. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." Her expression became serious. Very serious. The kind of seriousness only children could wear without pretending. "If Miss Eleanor gets her house back," Marcus glanced at her, "can I still visit?" The question hit harder than anything said inside the courtroom, because underneath it lived another question. Will I be left behind again? Marcus knelt beside her. "You don't have to worry about that." Lily studied him carefully. Children were experts at detecting false promises. She seemed satisfied, at least for now. That night, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about Lily's question. Around midnight, he sat alone reviewing legal documents again. Property disputes, financial records, guardianship reports. Then his phone rang. Daniel Reeves. Marcus answered immediately. "Marcus, thought I found Kevin." Marcus stood so quickly his chair nearly tipped over. "What, he's alive? He's in Fort Worth." The next afternoon, Marcus drove there alone. The trailer park sat on the edge of town, old mobile homes, broken fences, forgotten people. Kevin opened the door after the second knock. For a moment, neither man spoke. Marcus expected anger. Instead, he saw exhaustion. Years of it. Inside, Marcus placed the foster care records on the table, the transfer order, the state documents, the evidence proving Eleanor never gave him away. Kevin stared at the papers. His hands began shaking. Slowly, he sat down. "No." Marcus said nothing. Kevin kept reading. Again and again. For nearly 30 years, he had believed the same story. That Eleanor had chosen her real family over him. That she had abandoned him. When he finally looked up, tears filled his eyes. "She didn't send me away, so..." The answer shattered something inside him. For the first time, Marcus wasn't looking at the man who took the house. He was looking at the 14-year-old boy who never stopped standing on that porch. The next morning, Kevin disappeared, but before leaving, he signed a full confession and left a letter addressed to Eleanor. The civil hearing lasted less than 3 hours. In the end, it was not one dramatic piece of evidence that changed everything. It was the weight of many small truths stacked together. Bank transfers, mortgage records, guardianship documents, property filings, years of paperwork telling a story nobody had wanted to see. Kevin never came to court. By then he was already gone. But unlike before, Marcus understood why. Their meeting in Fort Worth had changed everything. Kevin had finally learned the truth. The records proved Eleanor never abandoned him. The system had. For nearly 30 years, he had carried hatred toward the wrong person. Before disappearing, Kevin signed a full confession. Then he left behind a letter. Not for the court, not for Marcus, for Eleanor. Daniel Reeves handed it to Marcus after the hearing. The paper was folded twice. The handwriting looked rushed. Marcus read it alone. Kevin admitted taking the loans, admitted using the house, admitted convincing himself that Eleanor owed him something. Not money, not property, a family. The letter never asked for forgiveness. It never justified what he had done. Instead, it revealed something sadder. For nearly 30 years, Kevin had believed Eleanor chose Marcus over him. For nearly 30 years, Kevin had believed Eleanor chose Marcus over him. The records finally proved otherwise. The truth came too late to undo the damage. But before he disappeared, Kevin had finally understood what happened. Eleanor had never abandoned him. The system had. In his mind, he remained the 14-year-old boy standing on a porch watching a car pull away. A week after moving back home, Eleanor received another envelope. No return address. Inside was an old photograph. Marcus recognized it immediately. The Christmas picture Lily had found. A teenage Kevin stood beside Eleanor. Awkward, hopeful, like a boy trying to believe he finally belonged somewhere. On the back, someone had written a single sentence. "You were the closest thing I ever had to a mother. I'm sorry." There was no signature. There didn't need to be one. Eleanor sat on the porch holding the photograph for a long time. Then she placed it inside a drawer beside her bed. Not with anger, not with resentment, with peace. Rachel faced consequences of her own. The court found evidence of financial misconduct and negligence, though not all of it reached the level of criminal fraud. Part of the settlement required restitution and participation in a financial rehabilitation program. A month later, Marcus received a letter from her. Short, simple, honest. She admitted that helping Kevin had gradually become choosing Kevin, then protecting Kevin, then lying for Kevin. By the time she realized how much damage had been done, she had already become part of it. She apologized to Eleanor. She apologized to Marcus. And she apologized for confusing her own pain with permission to hurt others. Marcus read the letter twice, then put it away. He never wrote back. But he stopped carrying anger. That was enough. 2 months later, the legal process ended. The house was returned. Not because of luck, not because of a miracle, because records existed, because people spoke up, because a lawyer followed the facts, because Eleanor finally allowed herself to be helped. The day she stepped back onto the property, she stood quietly in the driveway. The little brick house looked smaller than Marcus remembered. Fresh repairs had been completed. The porch had been restored. The windows had been replaced. But Eleanor wasn't looking at any of that. She was looking at the front door, the same door she had locked for the last time more than a year earlier. Marcus handed her the key. Neither spoke. She opened the door slowly, then stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of paint and clean wood. Nothing special. Just home. Eleanor stood in the living room for several seconds. Then she sat down and cried. Not because she had lost the house, not because she got it back, because she no longer had to keep surviving. Marcus sat beside her and waited. Sometimes that was all people needed. Not solutions, not speeches, just someone willing to stay. 3 weeks later, another small miracle happened. Not the movie kind, the real kind. Lily got her own room. The walls were pale blue. The furniture came from donations, garage sales, and a few pieces Marcus bought himself. Nothing expensive, nothing fancy. To Lily, it looked like a castle. She spent the first hour opening and closing the closet door, then sitting on the bed, then opening the closet again. Marcus watched from the hallway. "Do you like it?" Lily looked at him as if the question made no sense. "It's mine, yes." She stared around the room. No shelter, no temporary placement, no waiting list, no packed bags by the door. Just hers. For the first time in a very long time, Marcus saw certainty replace fear, and that was worth more than any business deal he had ever closed. Months passed. Marcus began turning down international assignments. Not all of them. Just enough. Enough to be present. Enough to eat dinner at the table. Enough to drive Lily to school sometimes. Enough to sit on the porch with his mother when the evenings cooled down. The change felt strange at first, then necessary. One afternoon, while helping repair a loose fence post, Marcus looked across the yard. Eleanor was kneeling in the garden. Her hands were covered with soil. Rows of flowers stretched across the flower bed, new life growing where neglect had once taken root. Lily sat nearby reading a library book aloud. Occasionally she stumbled over a word. Eleanor always helped, patiently, the same way she had helped Marcus years ago. Watching them together, Marcus finally understood something he should have learned much earlier. For 6 years, he thought he was protecting his mother. He sent money, paid bills, solved problems from a distance. But protection wasn't the same as presence. Love wasn't measured by account balances. It lived in ordinary moments, shared meals, doctor appointments, school pickups, conversations, time. The things money could support, but never replace. One quiet Saturday morning, the house felt peaceful. Eleanor stood in the kitchen making tea. Sunlight spilled through the window. Outside, Lily was getting ready for school activities with friends. Marcus tightened the last screw on the repaired fence and stepped back. For a moment he simply looked around. The garden, the porch, the open front door, the people inside. No one was living under a bridge. No one was sleeping in a shelter. No one was waiting for someone to come rescue them. The rescue had already happened. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. Eleanor carried 2 cups of tea onto the porch. She handed one to Marcus. Neither said much. They didn't need to. Some silences felt lonely. This one felt like home. And if this story made you think about someone you've been meaning to call, maybe don't wait too long. Sometimes the people we love aren't asking for money or grand gestures. Sometimes they just need to know we're still there. And if you'd like, share your thoughts below and join us again for another story.